How a Prince Falls from Grace. Andrew, Duke of York. There's nothing quite as regal and sovereign as, well, royalty itself. The great crown names of Europe have survived through the centuries pretty much on principle and symbolism alone. Or, to be more precise, sleuth political maneuvering and quite a lot of collected wealth. You couldn't blame anyone for actually believing they were chosen by God to lead their respective nations. I mean, just look at those palaces, those dresses, those parades! But what happens exactly to those royals who don't quite inspire us? The ones who step just over the line of how much exactly the rest of civilization is willing to accept. History is full of royals that remind us that, at the end of the day, they're just people in big houses they never built, wearing too many layers of clothing and looking down sternly on the will of others. This is Moolah TV, and today's subject matter is one of the many names in history that hoped that their titles and influence would be enough to hide the accusations of their crimes. Another noble, duke, royal, and even prince thrown to the sides of history to not tarnish the immaculate reputation of the crown. Whether deserved or not, we're speaking, of course, of His Royal Highness no more, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and his messy, messy relation to the Epstein tragedies. Early life, the silver spoon. Now, it is difficult to talk about the rise of someone born pretty much under a roof that has literally everything. Quite literally a silver spoon and a golden cradle. To put that into context, and estimates vary greatly, in 2001, the Daily Mail pegged Her Majesty's fortune at about $2.2 billion, excluding things owned by the crown, such as Buckingham Palace. However, this year, the Times put her net worth at $660 million, making her only the 356th wealthiest person in the UK. Don't worry, the British royal family won't have to get a part-time job just yet. Reports have suggested that the Queen also holds an investment portfolio worth up to about $952 million. She is also alleged to have one of the world's greatest stamp collections that is said to be valued at $190 million. Then there's the property, including Balmoral and Sandringham, that is owned by the Windsor family as opposed to the crown. Those two properties alone are worth about $389 million. Now, with all that in mind, Prince Andrew was born in the Belgian suite of Buckingham Palace on the 19th of February 1960, the third child and second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He was the first child born to a reigning monarch since the birth in 1857 of Queen Victoria's youngest child, Princess Beatrice, which is apparently quite the big deal, but not quite the big deal enough. He was often thought of as a spare, rather than the heir to the throne. As with his older siblings, Andrew was looked after by a governess, who was responsible for his early education at Buckingham Palace. A queen has no time for her younglings with all the ruling she has to take care of after all. In September of 1973, he entered Gordonstown, in northern Scotland, which his father and elder brother had also attended, an all-boys legacy school for the most influential families of that sector of Europe. Military life. A true Navy boy. Now, being from the family he was, a career in the British military was more than expected of young Andy. And so it was. The royal household announced in November of 1978 that Andrew would join the Royal Navy the following year. In December, he underwent various sporting tests and examinations at the Andrew Selection Center at RAF Biggin Hill, along with further tests and interviews at HMS Daedalus and interviews at the Admiralty Interview Board, HMS Sultan. During March and April of 1979, he was enrolled at the Royal Naval College Flight, undergoing pilot training until he was accepted as a trainee helicopter pilot and signed on for 12 years from 11th of May 1979. On the 1st of September of the same year, Andrew was appointed as a midshipman and entered the Britannia Royal Naval College, Dartmouth. During 1979, he also completed the Royal Marines All-Arms Commando course, for which he received his Green Beret. He was commissioned as a sub-lieutenant on 1st of September 1981 and appointed to the trained strength on the 22nd of October. After graduation, Andrew went on to elementary flying training with the Royal Air Force at RAF Leeming, and later basic flying training with the Navy at HMS Seahawk, where he learned to fly the Gazelle helicopter. Then he moved on to more advanced training on the Sea King helicopter and conducted operational flying training until 1982. He joined career-based Squadron 820 Naval Air Squadron, serving aboard the aircraft carrier HMS Invincible, which would turn out to be a quite auspicious and well-placed name and a well-chosen time to board it. On the 2nd of April 1982, Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, a British overseas territory claimed by it, leading to the Falklands War. Invincible was one of the 2 operational aircraft carriers at the time and, as such, was to play a major role in the Royal Navy task force assembled to sail south to retake the islands. Prince Andrew's place on board and the possibility of the Queen's son being killed in action made the British government apprehensive, and the cabinet desired that Prince Andrew be moved to a desk job for the duration of the conflict. The Queen, though, insisted that her son be allowed to remain with his ship. Prince Andrew remained on board Invincible to serve as a Sea King helicopter pilot, flying on missions that included anti-submarine warfare and anti-surface warfare, exocet missile decoy, casualty evacuation, transport, and search and air rescue. He witnessed the Argentinian attack on the SS Atlantic Conveyor. At the end of the war, Invincible returned to Portsmouth, where the Queen and Prince Philip joined other families of the crew in welcoming the vessel home. The Argentine military government reportedly planned, but did not attempt, to assassinate the prince on Mustique in July of 1982. Though he had brief assignments to HMS Illustrious, RNA's Kuldros, and the Joint Service School of Intelligence, Prince Andrew remained with Invincible until 1983. Commander Nigel Ward's memoir, Sea Harrier Over the Falklands, described Prince Andrew as an excellent pilot and a very promising officer. As an interesting aside, his busy bachelorhood, linked to actresses and models among others, was tabloid fodder, earning him the nickname Randy Andy and a reputation as a playboy prince. Andrew, Duke of York, officer of the Navy. On the 1st of February 1984, Andy caught his first big boy promotion to the rank of lieutenant, whereupon the Queen appointed him as her personal aide-de-camp. Because hey, if your monarch mom calls on you to do some real clerical work at the expense of the estate of your nation, you can't really refuse now, can you? On the 23rd of October 1986, the Duke of York transferred to the General List, enrolled in a 4-month helicopter warfare instructor's course at RNASE Wollaton, and upon graduation, served from February of 1987 to April of 1988 as a helicopter warfare officer in the 702 Naval Air Squadron, RNAS Portland. He also served on HMS Edinburgh as an officer of the watch and assistant navigating officer until 1989, including a 6-month deployment to the Far East as part of Exercise Outback 88. The Duke of York served as flight commander and pilot of the Lynx HAS-3 on HMS Campbelltown from 1989 to 1991. He also acted as Force Aviation Officer to Standing NRF Maritime Group 1, while Campbelltown was flagship of the NATO force in the North Atlantic from 1990 to 1991. He passed the Squadron Command Examination on the 16th of July 1991, attended the Staff College Camberley the following year, and completed the Army Staff Course. He was promoted to Lieutenant Commander on the 1st of February, and passed the Ship Command Examination on the 12th of March 1992. From 1995 to 1996, the Duke was posted as Senior Pilot of 815 Naval Air Squadron, then the largest flying unit in the Fleet Air Arm. His main responsibility was to supervise flying standards and to guarantee an effective operational capability. He was promoted to Commander on the 27th of April 1999, finishing his active naval career as the Ministry of Defense in 2001, as an officer of the Diplomatic Directorate of the Naval Staff. In July of that year, the Duke of York was retired from the active list of the Navy. 3 years later, he was made an honorary captain. On the 19th of February 2010, his 50th birthday, he was promoted to Rear Admiral. 5 years later, he was promoted to Vice Admiral. But now, if you've kept your ear to the ground or paid attention to the very first few minutes of our video here, you know Andrew holds none of these special military and noble titles anymore. Well, what exactly did he do to get ghosted by both his entire nation and the Queen, his mother herself? Well, the child prostitution ring connection. To get a good idea of the other side of the events that are going to be discussed going forward, we'd recommend taking a peek at our video covering the Epstein case and its many consequences. You see, Randy Andy's woes are largely the result of his association with Jeffrey Epstein, who was being held on federal sex trafficking charges when he died, and Ghislaine Maxwell, who was recently found guilty of conspiring with Epstein to recruit, groom, and abuse underage girls. The accusations against Prince Andrew surfaced in 2015 during a federal lawsuit against Mr. Epstein in Florida. One accuser, Miss Giuffer, claimed that the prince had raped her when she was 17, more than once and always at the behest of his American friends, which is to say, she was trafficked to him. After a disastrous BBC interview, in which he tried to explain his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, spurred backlash after the prince characterized the behavior of the disgraced financier and sex offender as unbecoming, the prince announced he was indefinitely stepping away from public life. During the interview, the prince said he had no recollection of meeting Miss Giuffer. but he could not explain a widely published photograph taken in London that showed him with his arm around the girl's waist, which made him look, to put it in legal terms, super duper guilty. He told the BBC that he had no memory of the photograph ever being taken, which did not help. He also made several bizarre claims to deflect his accuser's charges, among them that he was medically incapable of sweating. Miss Guffer has asserted that the prince was sweating profusely during one of their meetings. In August of 2021, Miss Guffer filed a lawsuit against Prince Andrew in federal court in Manhattan, repeating her accusations. His lawyers have tried to get the case dismissed, but as recently as January 12th of 2022, a judge allowed the suit to proceed. The Queen's Gambit. After the ruling this week in the sexual abuse lawsuit, Buckingham Palace announced that the prince would be relinquishing his military titles and royal charities. In a stinging rebuke, the palace also said the prince would no longer use the title His Royal Highness. The palace's terse statement said that Andrew would continue not to undertake any public duties and that he is defending this case as a private citizen. The decision to deprive Andrew of his military titles and the honorific His Royal Highness puts him on the same footing as his nephew, Prince Harry, who was forced to give up both after he and his wife withdrew from royal duties and moved to Southern California in 2020. Queen Elizabeth II will mark 70 years on the throne in February. Her Platinum Jubilee, which was supposed to offer an opportunity to reframe the royal narrative after 3 years of unrelenting turmoil. But now, the lurid tableau of a sexual abuse lawsuit unfolding in a Manhattan courtroom could cast a cloud over her celebrations. There are also deeper, more long-lasting risks for the monarchy as it seeks to remain relevant in the age of TikTok. The Queen remains beloved by the British public for her work ethic and long service. She has been served by 14 prime ministers, beginning with Winston Churchill, and has edged out Queen Victoria as the longest-reigning monarch in British history. But members of the younger generation have come of age during a period when the monarchy has been rocked by the scandal, and the accusations against Prince Andrew are helping to solidify that perception. As it is, in multicultural Britain and beyond, some have already felt alienated from the monarchy after Meghan and Harry's departure. The sense of it being an anachronistic family out of touch with contemporary mores was reinforced during an explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey, in which Meghan, a biracial former actress, raised the issue of racism within the royal family. The relegation of Andrew to the royal wilderness will also reinforce the royal model of Prince Charles, who will succeed his mother after her death and who has been advocating a streamlined House of Windsor. In the meantime, Andrew's lawyers have taken upon themselves to demand to interview the victim's husband and psychiatrist to try to validate that her memories might be false in what is being called the ultimate case of victim blaming. So, what do you guys think? Was the Crown right to distance themselves from Prince Andrew? Will justice be served? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and if you're feeling funky, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.